Try to make sure that you can hear me well. Thank you guys all for being here. It's great to see you. This is a really great show for an ACLU being here to hear about marijuana for whatever reason. I am currently a co-director of a campaign to regulate marijuana like alcohol, which is the campaign in support of Amendment 64. Have you guys heard of Amendment 64 yet, in large part? This is a statewide ballot initiative. It will be on the ballot this November. If it is passed, it will do three things. It will remove criminal penalties for adults 21 and older who are possessing or growing limited amounts of marijuana. It will establish a regulatory framework through which marijuana can be produced and sold similar to alcohol. So that means licensed production, licensed retail, licensed testing facilities, and really just having a very similar system, obviously not an identical system, but a similar one where we are actually controlling this product, ensuring its quality and ensuring that it's only being sold to people who are of age to purchase it. And the third thing it'll do is it will allow for the legal cultivation, processing, and transportation of industrial hemp, which is currently illegal in this country right now, despite it being a product with no psychoactive element to it whatsoever. It's an incredibly useful industrial product used for everything from fuel to textiles to dietary supplements and so on. So by doing this, we really can make history here in Colorado. 80 years ago, Colorado, in 1932, literally 80 years ago, Colorado voters went to the polls and they voted on a ballot initiative to repeal alcohol prohibition in the state of Colorado. And they passed it. And it wasn't until the next year that the federal government repealed alcohol prohibition. So, despite what you might hear, and as I touched on, despite what you might hear about how a state can't do this without federal law changing, it's been done before, it can be done again. Obviously, our current medical marijuana system is a very good example of how we can have a functioning system, something that is controlled by the state. We have a medical marijuana enforcement division within the Department of Revenue with employees who are traveling around to these places, sometimes with law enforcement. They got badges, they go inside, they look at marijuana plants, they make sure that your marijuana is doing okay, that you're selling it properly. It's really a pretty different scene. It used to be that the only guys with guns were the ones that were trying to shut that down, and now we got guys with guns who are trying to make sure that it's working so that they have their jobs. So, take the turn. But basically, we can make history here, and not only can we make Colorado the first place in the entire world to end marijuana prohibition and allow legal marijuana sales and possession and use, we can also make Colorado what could be the sole source of industrial hemp for the entire nation. This is a product, the United States imports more industrial hemp than any other nation in the world, and the United States is the only industrialized nation in the world that does not produce industrial hemp. So ultimately, this is going to be big for Colorado. When it comes to the economy, when we're looking at something like a legal marijuana market, for example, right now, medical marijuana, while it's a pretty large program, we've got approximately 90,000 patients right now, it's estimated at, it only accounts for 20% of the marijuana that's being produced and sold and consumed in the state of Colorado. So 80% of the marijuana that's out there, that's being bought and sold and will inevitably be bought and sold, is not taxed, it's not controlled in any way. And what we can do is we can take that illegal element out of there, we can make sure the product's being controlled, we can tax it, and we can generate a significant amount of revenue for this state, which is obviously much needed at this point. In fact, currently our medical marijuana system is raising millions of dollars in both licensing fees and sales tax revenue. Here in Colorado Springs, you guys might be aware and have read about the fact that sometimes the lights in the park are being kept on because they are raising, hundreds of thousands of dollars in tax revenue that they otherwise would not have. In Colorado, they bring in a couple $1 million every year, and statewide we have about 10,000 jobs in the medical marijuana industry. This is just a medical marijuana industry serving 20% of the population. 10,000 jobs. And that doesn't include all the real estate, all the attorneys, all the accountants, all the advertising people, all the peripheral businesses that are also benefiting. I mean, the Colorado Springs Independent, that thing would be out of business right now if they were not getting advertising of these medical marijuana centers, much like tax revenue, we're talking about a great deal in savings. Right now, most communities around Colorado, they prosecute every single case of marijuana possession. That means they require you to come into court. You have to sit there, you have to meet with a prosecutor, you have to have a magistrate or a judge deal with you. You have to go through this whole process, you go, stand in line, do all of this, and for what? It's really meaningless, and we can end all of that. And we can allow adults to simply possess the substance, which, as Mark touched on, is far less harmful than alcohol for a variety of reasons I won't get into. If anyone has a question or wants to dispute that, we can talk later. But we can certainly redirect a lot of our attention towards problems that actually need attention. Things like DUI. People are, oh my gosh, we're concerned about marijuana and DUI. That is a serious issue that is worthy of debate, and the legislature is debating it. But if we're so concerned about people driving under the influence of any substance, why aren't we worried about people driving under the influence of substances and instead worrying about people who are sitting in their homes or their dorm rooms or at a concert smoking pot? It's just silly. So we really need to redirect that attention towards things that matter. Because right now, we are really, we have cases that are racking up. Domestic violence cases in the state are completely being ignored for a long period of time. Yet they're handling all these marijuana cases. It's really quite silly. Also on the notion of the tax revenue, as I mentioned, we're currently generating sales tax here in the state of Colorado. The initiative that we're proposing also calls for an excise tax of up to 15% on wholesale sales of marijuana. So that would be between a cultivation facility that's producing it to a retail store or a product manufacturer, and obviously that'll trickle down. But up until 2017, it's capped at 15%, and then it can be adjusted for inflation. But what we're projecting right now is if this initiative passes, we're talking about $50 million in new revenue for the state of Colorado. And the first $40 million every year is going to be directed toward the state's public school construction fund. So that means it's going towards rebuilding schools, building new schools, updating certain types of technology, making sure that they're able to function. More importantly, that money can then be leveraged through bonds to raise billions of dollars for Colorado schools that we currently are not seeing. So we have a significant benefit there. So then, and I'm not one to say, let's just make shit legal so we can make money off of it. That's certainly not my point here. But the point is that there's no really logical reason why this product should be illegal, as the other guys here discussed. And so in light of that, we really stand to have a whole lot of benefit here. So moving forward, these guys, man, that was some doom and gloom, huh? Like, you had the rain and the clouds, and these guys like arrests and addiction and federal government and all sorts of horrible stuff. But I'm here to shine a little light on this, and these guys are both working along with me on this campaign and with a huge coalition to change this, and we can do that this year. And this is the first time that I can say that we can do that this year. In 2006, I ran a statewide initiative here in Colorado that would have made possession of up to an ounce of marijuana legal for adults. When we launched that initiative, we had no expectation of winning. We wanted to have a statewide discussion about marijuana. We were able to have a statewide discussion about marijuana that led very much to the attitudes that we're seeing here today. But if someone had said, is this thing going to pass? I'd say, well, I hope it passes. But I wouldn't say, yeah, it's going to pass. I'll have my mortgage on it. Because I knew that it was something that would pass. We ultimately got 41% of the vote, which we were very happy with. We wanted to make sure we got more than 40%. We only spent about $100,000 total on the campaign past the petition drive, maybe not even that. This time around, whereas polling back then, we had 41%, we're now seeing polls that are showing between 48 and 54% support, and only about 38 to 42% opposition. The last poll that was done in Colorado was in December. It had 49% support, 40% opposed. But as great as that sounds, we really are basically 50-50. So I can say honestly that we can win just as easily as we can lose. And that's never been something that could be said anywhere in the country with a straight face, at least in my opinion. So what are we going to do? I mean, we have this opportunity. We've seen the public move forward in such a huge way over the last several years. I mean, things are different since 2006 when it comes to marijuana, right? I mean, this is not 2006 when it comes to marijuana in Colorado. People have changed. They have now started to see that it can be used widely, it can be regulated, it can be controlled. It's okay if you have a medical marijuana center in your there isn't crime associated with these things. They're robbed less frequently than banks. It's just not a problem, and it is providing all these benefits, not just in tax revenue and in jobs and all that, but also, of course, when it comes to medical marijuana benefits to the people who are using it, and really helping to the community. And in those places that don't want to have these marijuana stores, they don't have to. We've seen communities throughout Colorado decide that that's not something they want. Quite frankly, I think that they're going to come to realize in the relatively near future that they probably are going to want them, because they are seeing everyone in their cities and towns drive down the freeway 60 miles to go spend their money somewhere else, which is not a very good business plan. So, but ultimately, our initiative will do that as well. It'll allow localities to decide for themselves. If they do not want to allow marijuana retail stores and marijuana cultivation facilities, they don't have to. Now, you'll still be protected if you want to use marijuana or grow the limited amount that you're allowed to grow under the initiative. So, just like with medical marijuana, just because your community might ban retail stores, it doesn't mean that, it's banned outright. It's kind of similar to a dry county. So there are no sales, and I'm sure a lot of folks in here might be some more than others familiar with dry counties and the differences in state alcohol laws. I know I went to college in Virginia. We had state stores where we had to go and buy alcohol. So it's different everywhere, and that's going to be the case here in Colorado. It'll be different everywhere. Localities will zone how they want to zone, much like they're doing with medical marijuana. The state will regulate it how they see fit, and it'll be just like how we're currently handling liquor stores, and it will not be a problem. So we have a huge coalition that's come together in support of this thing, and we're really moving forward. We've got the attitudes are shifting, and as a result, the coalition has grown quite a bit. Whereas we used to see, only about 40% support, we're seeing support in the 50s. Whereas we never really saw editorial boards saying anything supportive about marijuana. When we ran our initiative in 2006, which was a couple years after we started here in Colorado, working and running local ballot measures, we started seeing these papers. The Colorado Springs Gazette, albeit a very libertarian-leaning paper, has come out in support of making marijuana legal. The Durango Herald, the Aurora Sentinel, the Summit Daily, the Boulder Weekly, who'd have thought? But they're all, we're starting to see it become a lot easier for editorial boards, for elected officials, for organizations to come out and talk about this. The ACLU of Colorado as a whole is an endorsing organization of this initiative. They've been working on it. Rosemary Harris-Lytle, who is one of the staff members with the ACLU of Colorado, is also the recently elected president of the Colorado NAACP, is on board. She is an endorser of the initiative, and she's been working really hard, hopefully, to get the NAACP's endorsement. So we're seeing that come together. The Colorado Democratic Party, the state party as a whole, officially supports the initiative. We worked with activists all over the state through the caucus process. We had hundreds of precincts pass resolutions in support of this initiative. And that resulted in these resolutions going to the county level. So we ended up seeing more than a dozen counties, including El Paso, pass resolutions endorsing this initiative. And as a result of all those counties, including 8 of the 10 largest in the state, we then saw the state convention take this on. And the state convention passed a resolution officially supporting it. They don't endorse. Endorsement is what the small board of Democratic leadership gets to do, is endorse. But the state party as a whole gets to officially support. So we have the official support. We'll take it. This would never have happened just a few years ago. So local officials, city council members, county commissioners, board of trustees members from little towns all over the state are getting on board. The Colorado Criminal Justice Reform Coalition, which some of you might be familiar with, the Colorado Criminal Defense Bar, the Libertarian Party as well. It's all coming together, and our hope is that we will get people talking enough and making people feel comfortable enough that we can make this happen this year. And that's really what it's going to take, and that's what I'll end with here is our game plan. And what we're doing is we are really focusing in this first several months, we are focusing on encouraging people to talk to each other about this issue, because that's where change happens. If you get handed a flyer saying that, support this or that, or oppose this or that, how often do you say, I'm changing my position? It doesn't happen. But when you talk to your brother, or your sister-in-law, or your father, or your employer, or a colleague, and they say, well, yeah, It's talkitupcolorado.org. We have some little cards over there, little business cards with the website on it that you can grab. And the whole thing is geared around promoting these types of conversations. It has articles, an editorial, a big article written by a former police chief from Seattle, a column from a pediatric nurse in Denver that appeared in the Denver Post for Mother's Day. And it gives you the option of sharing these with people you know. And we just want people to have those opportunities to start the conversations. That's what it takes, is just saying, did you see that in the news? Or, hey, I went to this meeting and there was this guy there who was raving about how we can make marijuana legal. And you just start that conversation, and that's where we're going to see the change happen. So we're really pushing that very heavily. We're also hitting the ground with the grassroots element, canvassing, going to events, we're having a presence as many places as we can be. And then finally, in order to win, it's just a reality that it takes money. And I'm not going to ask you guys for money, don't worry. Unless if you have some. But whereas, like I said, in 2006, we probably spent less, than $100,000, if that, not even. We just deposited the check. We're getting about $800,000 worth of television ads. We're buying them this week. And so we are going to be raising money over the next several months. We want to throw at least a couple $1 million into this, because this isn't just about making it legal for, Colorado people to smoke some pot. This is about completely shifting the paradigm and taking it from a system of prohibition, changing to a system of regulation, making marijuana a legal product for the first time in this country since the 1930s. And sending a message to the federal government, as Art talked about. We can do this, and it's going to take us doing this. It took states passing these local state measures about alcohol prohibition to force the state government, or the federal government, to take that action. And right now we have federal legislation that's pending. We have industrial hemp legislation. We have legislation that would decriminalize marijuana at the federal level and leave it up to the states. We have federal legislation that would allow for medical marijuana and defund the Drug Enforcement Administration, not allow them to go on these raids and harass patients and providers anymore. Like, it's sitting there in Congress, but there just isn't quite enough support, and it's not a big enough debate yet. And so we can make it a big debate.